Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. As I'm assuming you're still listening in isolation. And if you're not, you may be listening while you're now allowed to go outside and run, or perhaps driving your car to go do a thing called work. I don't know. I don't know where you're at listening to this, but, but I'm going to assume it's an isolation and that you've listened to every other podcast. You've watched every Netflix show you can. And now it's brought you to this podcast. And you go, this is all I got left to listen to. So welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. So the confidence level is just awesome.
It's right next to myself. What do they call that?
Esteem?
Huh?
Esteem?
Yeah, self-esteem. That's what they call that. I don't know.
We'll just call it humility. It's godly then. It's fine.
There you
Humility.
go. Changing
You're
the
so
name.
humble. You're so humble. So last week we talked about maybe some personal takeaways from this whole thing. This week we're talking about takeaways from the church.
Woo, woo.
Yeah. So in my mind, there are a couple of different avenues for this one. Because there are like the spiritual takeaways that you hope that, like areas that I hope that our church grows through this. And then I think there are also kind of a set of takeaways that like how we've had to do church, what that has looked like. How do we come back to it? Is it just snap your fingers and back to normal?
Well, and
Probably
some people have no interest in coming back to the same way before. I've seen that comment online a lot.
Yeah, well, and then there are probably some people who have no interest in coming back and changing anything.
Yeah.
Like, nope, everything's just the same, right?
So
it's probably a pretty wide spectrum.
Yeah. So let's address, because I feel like the spiritual takeaways we can get through a little bit quicker because they're not like material touchable things. And then we can probably move on to the actual how everyone is now a televangelist. So let's go with spiritual takeaways first. We'll start with you because you're the pastor, and you've probably dealt with this a little bit more as far as with your congregation firsthand.
I've actually grown a lot in humility. I'm really good at it.
I'm the most humble person there ever was.
Yeah. No,
Read my book, Humbleness and How I Achieved It.
Okay. All right. So I think one that this is doing is it's either forcing, forcing isn't the right word. It's going to bring out whether fathers are spiritual leaders or not.
That is for true. Yes.
Yeah, because you know as well as I do, there are lots of dads out in the world that are absent, or are a lot of people in America depend on the church to do all of the formation stuff with their kids. And the most you'll get out of them is, hey, what did you learn in Sunday school? Okay.
That's a pretty common answer.
Right. No, it totally is. So this is an opportunity, I think, for dads to either rise up and kind of be that spiritual leader that they should be in their homes, or at the very least learn that, wow, I'm not, and I need to do better at this, or do it in the first place. So I think that's one thing. Another thing is that specifically, I think that another thing that the American church, especially historically, is sometimes not good at, is depending on one pastor to do all of the visitation, whatever you want to call it, where all of the pastoral care is done by one person. And this has made that impossible, because right at this moment, the entire flock needs to be checked in on, needs to be, rather than, a lot of times as a pastor, you have at least a group of folks who are pretty self-sufficient, you know, like they'll show up at church, they'll come to the Bible studies, they'll, whatever you got going on in your church, they're there, they're doing their thing. And if there's an issue, you're probably going to hear about it because you're with them. So it doesn't take actually reaching out all the time. But right now, you're not with anybody. And so we've actually divided up everybody on the first of all, this is an important takeaway. Membership is important right now, right? Because your name being on a list is
So
what
people know you,
on, right? Don't rely on my VA screwed up memory to remember every single person that's not on that list right now. So just a thought, side note, but our congregation has been divided up amongst all of the elders who do the visiting, check in on people, call people, do whatever we need to do. But on top of that, I've heard of the congregation kind of reaching out to the congregation, which is super cool. So this is not only an opportunity for fathers to be spiritual leaders that they should be, it's also an opportunity for people in general who maybe have never really dabbled in shepherding to do that and care for one another. Instead of just showing up, you know, one of the big takeaways for the church is we're going to probably come back. Now, we're going to have to be reminded of this because it's not natural, but we're going to come back and really appreciate one another, right? And really appreciate the fact that we can have community. And
I haven't seen you for so long.
Yeah. I don't even like you, but give me a hug. Wait, we can't. You know? Yeah, it's going to be weird, but...
Yeah. Well, and as far as like what you said with the spiritual takeaway part of it, as far as the discipleship at home, I think that's a major thing, especially so let's assume too that, I mean, there's some people that have never had to spend very long at home, right? So if, I know whenever I was between jobs, which would probably be my best like connection to somebody that's laid off right now that's home, like when you're used to going, and then you don't anymore, you lose your mind. That first week when I was between jobs, 2 years ago was when it happened. Like that first week, I almost drove Christina crazy because I had been going 1,000 miles an hour and then the brakes got shoved on and like I still wanted to go 1,000 miles an hour, but I didn't know what to do. So I cleaned the house like top to bottom in a day. And then I was like, what else is there to do? Like I didn't. And she was just like, just play with the kids. I'm like, but there's got to be something to clean, organize. There's got to be a task to be accomplished. And I think a lot of people probably were doing that. And then now they're at home. They've never been forced to be at home around their family for longer than a couple hours because they would work all day, come home, have dinner, go to bed, rinse, repeat, do the same thing again. And now there's probably people at home, dads and moms, that are like, who are these little things that make messes all the time and want to hang out? Like, who are these people? And I think that the spiritual implication of that, going back to that, is that like, where are your priorities at? Because it'd be really easy to sit down in front of a television and veg out and do nothing. But that says a lot about spiritual implication wise, where your heart's at, like where your idol's at, identifying those. So not only like, you know, so if you're sitting at home and like you've been home for 5 weeks now or a couple weeks, depending on where you're at, and like your biggest motivation is get up and watch TV and then maybe eat a little bit and then go back to bed. That should be showing you where your idols are, or what you're worshiping. And like you said, especially with the dads leading their family part of it, like if you've never done devotions with your kids before, if you don't do family devotions, like that is evidently apparent now because you're literally getting at best 2 hours of your service on television, which is where everything else is already coming through. I actually made a meme about it the other day. Like at this point, 5 weeks in, is like, all right, let's go watch service again on Sunday morning. Like it's just a matter of, it's like, okay, it's just one more thing on the television to watch along with all the other things that we're already doing. So if you're not like as a family, like deliberately sitting down and, getting in the Bible, I'm not talking about like for an hour. I'm talking about like devotional time,
Yeah, 10 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like if you're not doing that, that should be readily apparent to you. Like first of all, you shouldn't be relying on the church on Sunday morning to give you all of your food anyway. And you definitely shouldn't be relying on a 20-30 minute sermon on your television, which is where all your Netflix and Disney Plus and content comes through already, to think that that's going to equal out anything. Yep. So as far as the spiritual implications part, this is putting it in your face that I really need to be in the Word more, or I really need to appreciate the gathering more, or I really need to just be reading more. Not necessarily just about the Bible, but just books about theology or about God's character. I'm never gonna read through all these, but like I have all these that I can read right now, and so it's just a matter of like, are you gonna watch? Yeah, you have bookshelves. These are just the T4G books that I got that I will never ever finish because I don't have that time, unless I don't go to work. Then I'll have time. But
the Apostles' Creed book.
Yeah, that came in. It did. I haven't read it, but dude, I've got that one. I've got this. It's just I've got so many books. I should just ship some of them to you because you could probably read them. And I'll mention, actually, I've got this one keyed up because this is a good one that I'll mention here in a minute. But spiritual implication wise,
yeah,
that's what should be apparent, is that not that we're ever going to be in the Word enough as our family, as families, but it should be an indication for us that we're probably already not in it enough.
Yeah.
In order to disciple our families correctly. If I'm speaking to dads specifically, like this should be an indication that even if you were already doing it, there's probably places that you can tweak to do it. Because I'll tell you right now, Disney Plus and Netflix and whatever else your kids are watching are not going to disciple them well. So you should at least have that in your mind and saying, oh, wow, this is even more apparent now. So,
yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the takeaways, I think, in general for the Christian is kind of what you were talking about, that how often, not only as a family and spiritual leader of your family, but just with your own personal thing with God, with your own personal walk, your own relationship with him, what does that look like? Because if you're the type of person who's been because of work or whatever, there's always excuses that seem relevant and worthy of being excuses. But if you're the type of person who always puts off reading, and specifically the Word, or studying the Word, praying, if you specifically put that time off, you're going to notice right now more than ever when you are cranky at home because you've been around home too much, or when you're I actually was able to talk about this Sunday when we've been walking through Matthew, and we just so happened to be at the verse 8 in chapter 5, which is the pure in heart. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And so I get to talk about purity of heart, and some of that talk was at the end of it was that one of the things that's going on right now likely is that all of the things about you that are ugly are coming to the surface. Like there are things that people will discover about themselves during something like this that they didn't even know was a thing before. So I think for personal growth and just within the Christian life, this is a golden opportunity for you to discover areas that you're really weak in and work on them, right? And repent and spend time with God working on them. So.
Well, and on a close for this, for me, before we move on to the physical stuff that the church can take away from as far as digitally and stuff, for me, it was really apparent that they're like, even now, so now that even though not a lot has changed in our lives, but I've heard it from a lot of other people that how much has changed, that it really came to my mind that a lot of people don't have like a routine And when the little routine that they do have is taken away, like everything crumbles. So nobody, like people are sleeping till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, vegging out on Netflix all day, and they don't have a purpose. They don't have a drive. There's nothing for them to do. So even for me, even not that a lot's changed, I thought, okay, well, how can I adapt that into my life, right? So I've put a little routine in my day in the morning now, because of just learning, oh, okay, well, there's some things I can tweak. So I have an hour drive to work. So the first 15 minutes from point A to point B, I'm just going to use that as my prayer time. From point A to point C, I'm going to use that to listening to the word. And then from point C to D, I'm going to listen to a podcast or something. Whereas beforehand, I would have just listened to that podcast the whole time.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's really been an apparent, I bring that up because I realized, even though my routine hasn't changed hardly at all, I'm doing the same thing I always did every day anyway, that, that there were little things from seeing that, you know, everybody else's routine falling to the ground, and they didn't have one outside of that very skeleton one anyway, was that, oh, I can tweak that, and I can do things, you know, in my life that I wasn't, like prayer I was already doing at another time of the day, but it was at home, you know, when there was a lot of other stuff taking my attention from it. When I'm trapped in my car, I'm just going to shift that a little bit. So anyway, all that to say that I think when we all see the routines are gone, like you said, things bubble up and say, okay, well, what can we do to tweak that or change that or adapt to that situation? Just again, that God's just a great gift to us, that he's saying, hey, what are you going to do now that you don't have anything to do? So now on the digital side of it, how's it feel to be a televangelist now? You got your suit on, you're blowing the coronavirus away, asking for donations. How's it going?
Well, no, I'm actually in the middle, interrupted by this meeting. I'm actually in the middle of writing my letter of resignation. So,
well, that's not good. Did you listen to that David Platt sermon again that we talked about?
Yeah, no joke. That was rough, dude. That was rough. But one that I'll probably actually download and save somewhere on my computer so I can listen again, like randomly, because that, man, convicting. Anyway, off subject.
Off topic. Televangelist, all that. What have you guys done? I don't think you had any sort of online presence before that. So how has that changed?
So we had an online presence in the sense that.
Oh, that's true. You did have an audio version, didn't you?
Yeah. So the sermons were audio, with the kind of the slides with audio behind it. We had a Facebook page, and if there was anything major or an article or I don't know, whatever, share it. Some of those artsy pictures with verses written on them, whatever. But this has completely flip-flopped a lot. So dude, it's been a wreck. I'll just be honest. It's been a wreck. So the very first little bit, I think the first week that we did fake church is what I'm calling it. So for those of you who are watching or listening to this and you always go to church, I'm putting the quote fingers up. You always go to church by watching it. That's fake church. That's not the real thing.
I would like to think people don't do that before the pandemic, but I know that in my heart that they have. So,
So anyway, the first week we started doing fake church, right? I sat. No, what was it? It was Sunday morning. So our worship team typically comes in on Saturday, practices at some point, like in the afternoon, and then Sunday morning they'll arrive and practice, run through things one more quick time at 8. And then our gathering starts at 10. So we kind of at first didn't really know what to do. So we went ahead and they did their practice. And then we thought, all right, so tomorrow morning we'll get here earlier, 7:30, and you can run through it real quick, and then we'll just
go right
record it and then post it. Recorded at 10. So when you have the bandwidth that we pay for here, that's impossible.
Okay.
Straight up, the first week we had everything recorded by I mean, probably 850, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I record and post a video on YouTube or Facebook or something, I mean, they're like 5, 7, 10 minutes
Yeah.
tops. It doesn't take very long. We recorded a whole hour-long deal, man, and started the upload to YouTube process at like 9.
Mm-hmm.
No way, Jose. Yeah, people weren't able to tune in and watch that at any time until, oh man, it was probably 11:15 or something. Like I
Your internet speed is no bueno at all.
terrible. I finally gave up and closed my laptop and went home. This is a brand new MacBook Pro 16-inch. It was not the computer, it was the internet. So I took it home and started the process over. It took way less time.
Yeah.
But learned our lesson right away with that.
Don't
right?
upload on the church internet.
So the second week, I'd done research by then, and I don't know if you've ever heard of OBS.
Yes.
Software. Yeah. So for those who don't know, OBS is essentially a way to go live on social media or YouTube or something with pre-recorded material. You can do that. So the second week we did everything Saturday. So they came a little bit earlier than they would normally do on Saturday, ran through practices, whatever. And then we recorded the whole service, the whole gathering that we would usually do. So that hour-long thing. So then I could take it home, edit a little bit, had more time to do it. That worked pretty well. But even the internet at my home wasn't set up for live streaming, right? Because that takes a little more oomph to upload it. It's one thing to upload it and post a video. That doesn't take anything. But to live stream, you need a certain amount of upload speed. So that was a big thing. And it was glitchy and whatever else. And
everybody's watching at home being like, your face looks like on dial-up. You look like a Minecraft character.
It was bad. And I actually finally learned this whole thing has actually saved me about $15 a month on internet. Because I found out the competitor here in town, I could actually get gigabit internet for cheaper for 2 years. So that was a cool deal.
Whatever trash internet company you had before, it's like, stupid pandemic. We had him.
Right. So it's definitely been a learning curve. Oh, and 2 weeks ago, we have our setup is we have 2 screens up in the front with the lyrics and whatever else, the typical kind of slideshow on it. We have the screen upstairs that the tech looks at when they're working with Proclaim presentation software. And then we have a screen in the back of the sanctuary that the worship team will look at, confidence monitor. So there are 3 separate screens as far as the computer is concerned. So the computer it was a Mac Mini, and
depending on which one you got is old. It's even the newest one's old.
From 2012.
Oh yeah.
And it straight fried.
The guys, I'm out.
Yeah, my port stopped working. And this is completely separate from pandemic, right?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with it. It just had some bad timing, right? So the HDMI port stopped working. The other 2 screens I had to kind of rig somehow, like duct tape stuff together to make it work, kind of a thing. And then on top of that, I had Proclaim presentation software. That's what we use for our slides and stuff. So I had that running. That's not huge as a program. It's like running PowerPoint, just about, maybe a little more robust.
The fact that it could run on a Mac Mini from 2012 says a lot about it. Not taking a lot of,
Well, so we had 2 gigs of RAM. 2. So 2.
Those were just chugging along as hard as they could.
Oh man, it's like Thomas the Tank Engine pulling an actual train. That's what this was like. So we had that going on.
I had to get it over with.
Dude, so we had Proclaim running, and then I opened Google Chrome,
Too
an
much.
internet browser. Okay.
A pretty downed one too, as far as they do a good job of condensing.
When both of those things were on, anywhere you click, you had to think, dude, it was so bad. And then, so finally it was just like, look, everything we do is virtual right now.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do this. Like, this is impossible. So long story short, this is one of the reasons that even as businesses, as churches, as people, you want to do the, planning ahead monetarily. So we were able to go out and get a new Mac Mini with 32 gigs of RAM.
Hey, there you go.
So we're never going to have to worry about that, at least not for a long time.
Yeah, not for a while.
So it runs like butter now. It's awesome. But yeah, but dude, it's definitely been a learning thing. And we've really changed our Facebook presence. That's totally different now. Meaning one of the areas that I think people connect to me is that way. Like I'll post videos and just different announcements. Those are all in Facebook.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I know more about your church now than I ever did before. Like, because I follow your page. Like every stuff that come up, and like, oh, I don't know that guy. But apparently, this is happening. So
yeah.
I don't even go to your church, and I know more about your church than I did before.
Well, luckily after this, we'll probably be live streaming more, so you can just attend church that way.
There you go. Well, so on our end of it, same thing. Right? So our pastor, actually, it was funny, this last sermon he just did, on it, he mentioned, he goes, I was really hard on social media for a really long time, but now it allows, that's what he said. Now it allows us to do this, so I can't be too hard on it. But we didn't have, so nobody ever would have at our church, unless being forced into it, would have said, hey, we need to do a video version of this. We need to stream it. Nobody would have said that. Because again, a lot of the mentality is like you said about the fake church. It's a lot of the same mentality. Like if you want to come, you need to come. For a while, they had recorded it and given it, to the elderly that couldn't come or didn't have an internet connection, that sort of thing, as a supplemental thing to where, hey, you can't be here, but here's what we can do to help you. The first week it happened, or the first time when we found out we weren't going to be able to have church, I messaged the pastor. I was like, hey, what's our plan? What are we doing? Because I have equipment just from the Instagram page that I use. And I was like, I can just bring that down and we can use the same setup. So that's what we've been doing. We don't have a license to stream worship music. And I looked up how much that was, and I was like, I don't know if you want to do this. And they're like, we don't want to do that. So basically what we do is we just record his sermon on my camera. I bring it home. We always record it like Thursday night, Saturday night, bring it home. I edit it through. We put down in the descriptions songs that we would have normally sang, and encourage the congregation. It's like those lyrical videos you see on YouTube. And say, hey, encourage the congregation, hey, pull this up and sing it together as a family. So that way you have a little bit of family worship in there. The first week we didn't do that. And at our house here, we live like literally right next to my mother and father-in-law. So we went down to watch it with them. And my father-in-law, he leads music a lot at church. So he already had a hymnal at the house. So we just kind of did that. And I thought, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I just assumed that people would do something. And so that next week, that's what me and the pastor talked about. I was like, hey, let's put some songs in there because, we have a hymnal, but that's just out of coincidence. A lot of people, nobody's jacking hymnals from the church, taking them home thinking there might be a pandemic. So we need to give them an option here to, to sing something. Like, even if, I'm assuming some people were probably playing some worship music they had or something. But this way, we're all singing the same thing. It's as much as a community as we can be without being together. So we've been doing that, posting it online. Luckily, we have a prayer chain text groups that go around. So that was already set up anyway. So we just shoot that link out, and then everybody's got it. So we don't have to worry about distribution because I'd say a good portion of our congregation, 75%, is on Facebook. But we have, a good 25% of our congregation is elderly. They don't have a smartphone. They don't want the internet. They don't care about the internet. So, but they do have the ability to receive those text messages. And it's not they don't have the internet. It's just that unless something like this was going to happen, they're not going to get on. So this way we can shoot it out and it goes on YouTube. We haven't even tried live streaming. I'm not interested. Like, we're just like, it's just as easy to pop it on YouTube and then they can watch it whenever they want. And to be honest with you, all the pastor friends I've talked to, and I hope if you guys are listening to this, it's not a shock to anybody, but no one's doing a real legitimate live stream. They're recording it and then they're shooting it out to you. Even if there's 4 service times, they're just shooting the same stuff out to you 4 times. So, whatever.
I think the good thing, the one, and seriously, the one good thing about live streaming, of course, we're live streaming pre-recorded stuff like you're saying. But the one good thing about it that I've noticed, so there was a week, like I said, that we didn't have the connection to really do it right. So then I made the announcement and was like, listen, we're not doing live stream because we want you to be able to worship and do this thing. So, so instead of that, because it's glitchy, we're just going to post a video. So we did that, but went back to live streaming the next week because we upgraded our internet at home. So that's where I do it. But we went back to live streaming. The reason we did was because there actually were a few people from our church that were watching live, and it did simulate some form of togetherness, right? So that part was kind of cool. You could see the expressions on people's faces or what they would have been as they were like, good morning family or whatever, typing it, and people. So
and that's what some of the other pastors have said too. They have our church, and again, this is a total church by church scenario. Sure. Our church, there's not been a demand for that, but there have been other churches, other pastors that I've talked to that are similar to you. They're saying, hey, they'll type comments in while it's going on. There's actually churches that have people that are specifically set up to respond to that interaction to make sure that, there's some interaction. And it does give them, there is one pastor that I talked to, because that's what I asked him. I said, I mean, your people know that it's not live, right? He's like, yeah, they totally know it's not live. But it gives them and this goes back to the routine thing I was talking about. It gives them a routine to look to so they know at Sunday morning at 8, 11, and 3, there's going to be a service. So it's something built in to where it gives them a routine that says, hey, even though we know it's not live, at this time, that's when we're going to, attend church. So I know I'm downplaying it, making a joke of it. In my community, it makes no sense. But for other people, I can definitely see where it would be helpful. But the interesting thing on the YouTube side of it, and I'm sure you have those same statistics whenever you're like live streaming it, but I can see how far the average person goes into the sermon before they drop off. So I know some of y'all aren't watching all the way through. So it shows it gives you a graph on the YouTube analytics, which is hilarious because you're like, about 5 minutes, 25% of you click out and then it just keeps going. So that's interesting statistics. It's like almost pastoring and watching people fall asleep, only it's just analytical and you can do it. You can just see it happening. At these times, this is where most people check out.
Virtually. You see when people virtually are just like, you know what?
I'm done with this.
Yeah, it's time for NCIS. Yeah.
So what are your plans going on? So this doesn't go too long, but obviously we've all had to adapt to this new thing of going online. So what are the plans after whenever it happens, go back to church? What are your guys' plans? Are you still going to keep doing this? Have you found it helpful enough to keep doing it?
Yeah. So here's the thing about that. I've actually just been thinking about that. And I'm assuming we're already around that half-hour mark. I forgot to hit my little timer, but I think we're probably already at. And so I'm wondering if we should make everyone wait.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
And next week we talk about going back to church, and then the following week, the last week, we can talk about, because frankly, by the time people see this, we're going to be back in church.
You think? I'm not. Oh, you will be. I'm not confident that we will be.
Yeah. Well, North Dakota has been,
apparently pretty lean.
Spaced out. It's not been really.
We live next to Kentucky, in which Andy Brashear's like, you can't go anywhere, or I'll kill you.
Stone them.
So we live close enough to Kentucky. It's just funny to see all the different governors addressing this. But you're right. We'll talk about this here in a little bit. Hey, guys, we're going to keep you hanging. What do we do when we go back to church? That'll be next week.
Back to church physically, for one.
Well, yeah. I think we've established we don't count this as necessarily. It's fake church. All right, guys. We will talk to you next week about that. See you.
All right.